So we got a lab quiz today, right? I need to print the question, so I'll give you the task for the lab, and then I'll go to my room and print the question, and then we'll have the quiz. The task that I'm going to give you today is going to be based on what we covered already, like the file input and output, but it's going to be with graphical user interface. So let me just fire up NetBeans and create a very simple user interface, and then we will go from there. Okay, so the idea for this project is going to be something like this, that the user will be able to type in a file name, and then we will click on the open button, and that file will be read. You will show the content of that file right below this thing in something called a text area. This supports multi-line operations, because in a text field you can write only one line, but we may have several lines to deal with. That's why we need something like this, and let me make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so we got the, well actually this should be put into a VBox, and then the text area can be put right inside that. And I can also put a margin to put a gap. It just looks better that way. So altogether this VBox can then be put inside this, and we can have even gap all around. This looks better that way, but we have some sort of gaps all around. And I can make this anchor pane grow bigger now to fit in the whole thing. Maybe like that, but something like so. So we'll be able to open this file, and the content of the file will be read over here. Now the way we have written our file IO code before is that that file needs to be in your project directory. So you can start with that. Okay. Let's say we have 10 different files, and you can select whatever file that's in your project directory. You can read that file name and open that file. You can show the content right over here. That's the first task. And let me show you right away. Let us give it a name just to show you that this indeed works. Let's say this is our text area. Okay. And we can write our controller based on this. Make controller. So we don't have this thing anymore. We don't have the label. So let's get rid of that. And in the initialize method, just to show you how the text area works, let me write a few lines. We can say string text equal to hello new line world. So that's a 2-line text, and we can just say text area dot set text. Okay. If you look at the methods available to text area, you will see that do we have an append? Yes, we have an append text. So even if you had some text already and you want to add some more text, so let's say there is another line. We should have 3 lines of text. Let us run this project because initialize gets executed right at the beginning, and you should be able to see the output of that. See, we got 3 lines. That's how it should be. So with the append text method on the text area, you can add in new text. That's just to show you that this is also possible, because when you read in a text file, there can be many different lines, and you need to show them all in this text area. If it doesn't fit, then we will scroll down to read those content, or we can go scrolling on horizontally to find that. Now the target is that you have to read a file and you have to show the content. That's one part. But the name of this project is Text Analyzer, and what we like to do, let me wrap this in a H box because I want to have something on this side. I want to put in a read over there on that side, and in that way I want to get some analysis, like I'd like to know how many lines were there in that text file. I'd like to know how many words are there. How many characters are there? How many digits? And row below, how many? Let me keep it simple. How many vowels? Okay, so this is how it looks like. That's the basic setup. And let me space this out a little bit. Okay, so you'd have to either add text fields over here or labels over here so that we get a count. For example, for a text file that has 3 lines, the part on the right side, it should say lines 3. How many words? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 words. Okay. So you have to read each line at a time. That gives you the line count quite easily. How you can count the number of words, that's a slightly more challenge, but figure it out. See how you can understand how new words come up. Initially, let's make it simple. Let's say that the words will be separated just by a single space. Let's keep things really simple. So when you find a single space, you see that number of words are increasing, but soon you see that when you have punctuation marks, that can also say that we have 2 different words. Okay. So try to do things in incremental order, like try to solve problems as you go. And yeah, that's pretty much the task. So what I'm going to do here, I will save this project, I will upload to GitHub, and you have to download that and start working from there. We will write the file name, hit open, you show the content of the file, and at the same time you analyze the content and write down the numbers. How many lines are there, how many words are there, and everything from there on. Okay. Any question about the task itself? So if we can manage to do this, that would actually help us to handle file input-output operations along with user interface, which is something we will definitely need for our programming assignment. So you guys start working on this, and I'll go around to my room and print the questions and come back, and we'll have the quiz. Alright, let me just run this one time to make sure that everything looks alright. Yeah, it looks okay. So make sure that you have appropriate names for the text fields. You have appropriate names for the methods and everything. I've only added a fx ID for the text area. I haven't done anything else. That's all left for you. So with that said, I'm going to close this project and upload this thing. Git add all, git commit. Okay, so we'll have this quiz, but before I do that, I'll probably forget it if I don't write it down. Our next lab class will be on 19th, right? We got our exams running in this week from 9th, so we won't have a lab class on 12th, but we'll have another one on 19th. So let me declare this for the next quiz. Syllabus for that is going to be from a different book. Try touches. It's right here. So the next quiz is going to be on arrays and array list. So it's going to be pretty much the same thing, 10 minutes quiz, 10 questions. So that's that. Let us now have our quiz for today, count the timer, and let me pause the video again. Alright, let us go over these things very quickly, if we can. In Java, variables come in two flavors: easy question, primitives, and reference. That was actually the very first line of the chapter. Variable names cannot start with what? Digits, right? It has to start with letters or underscore or $sign. All these things are okay, not just digits. A reference that does not point to any object has the value, which one? Which null? B, the lowercase one, alright? Not the uppercase one. This is for C++, both of them. Okay, in Java, arrays are always objects. GC stands for garbage collector. A variable is like a cup because it holds stuff, right? That's why. Java references are different than C++. What? Pointers. Because in C++, you can actually see what's the value inside the pointer. You can print that out. Pointers. Write down the 4 primitive name types. Okay. B can be byte or boolean, whatever you write over there. C for character type. This one, if that's byte, this is going to be boolean. And then this one, no, short. String is actually not a primitive one. Integer, long, float, and double. So these are the 8 primitive ones. When there is no reference to an object, no one's pointing to it, it's eligible for what? Garbage collection. So that's that. Anyone got all of them correct? 9 of them correct. About 8. Alright, so we got the third quiz coming up. Please study for that. It's from a different textbook. Please make sure that you get the right one. Java how to program early objects. Alright, so let us go into our problem, the code that we have. We're going to read from the file, and before even loading that thing, let us just write some files in here to make life easier for us. This is going to be in our NetBeans projects. We're inside our Spring 2018 Java. This is our text analyzer. So I'm going to create 2 empty documents, input1.txt and input2.txt. Okay, so that's that. Just to make sure that we got 2 different things, so we got 2 different files, and we need to read them and show the content in our user interface. So the project that I got loaded right here, I need to make some changes, obviously. First of all, we need to put some method names. How can we open up a file? And we also need to put a placeholder or an ID. Let's call this file name text field, and handle file open action. I'm going to be very verbose over here, and this is where we can show the entire content of it, right? One thing I need to make sure that we have sufficient space all around, and that's how we do that. We will also need to increase the size of the sample pane as we do this. So that should be enough, I guess. Like so. And then we update this. We say make controller. So the first thing I want to do is write a piece of code that lets us read this file. Oh, what happened? Oh, I gave a name handle file open action to the button itself. That was not my intention. That was just silly. I don't need a button name. Let's just call this file open. That's going to be the name. So let us save this again and go back and redo our controller. So we'll see that now it's called file open button, and the action is right here. So how do you read a file? What classes do we need for that? Random access file. Okay, so first of all we need to know the file name, right? The file name is coming from where? File name text field. So file name text field dot get text. So we know the file name. Now we need to read that and show the content in the text area. So first of all, before showing the content in the text area, let us clear the text area first, so that if it had something else, it would be taken out. And now we need to create a file, random access file, like we did before. Let's say input equal to new random access file. And this is where we give the file name. We say that we're going to read that, and that's it. We need to import this because Java doesn't know what a random access file is. And that's not all. We need to add try catch because that file may not exist. Okay. So in our theory class, what I did is I wrote the try catch myself. But since we're using this IDE, you get the feature right here that if you have an error like this, you can go for the suggestions. You hold down Alter, hit Enter, and then you see all these suggestions over here. Alter, Enter. And what I'm trying to do here, I'm going to surround this statement with try catches so that we get the block. So right here, what it is doing, it's logging that. If you don't want to use this, if you want to just give an error to the user, you say system.r.println file does not exist. Okay, something as such, or you can do something else. Now, once the file is there, the task we need to do is we need to read the entire content of the file, and we need to show that in the text area. And that goes something like this, that we need to read that line by line. So while line, okay, let me do it first the way I did it in our theory class. While true, keep on reading one line at a time. Line equal to input dot read line, that's what we did. And then if our line is equal to null, that's when we go out of that loop. Otherwise, the line is there, so what you do is you just add it to the text area. Text area, I think that's what it's called, right? Text area dot append text. What text to append? That line itself. And we got a problem right here, that what if you cannot read from the file? The file is there, but we cannot read. So that's where in our theory class we saw that we needed to add a catch clause. So I'm going to get NetBeans to do it for me. It's just that I will just print it out on the console. Logging is obviously a better choice, but we haven't talked about logging yet. So file does not exist, and here some I will. Okay, somehow exception occurred. I don't know what it is, but at this point I'm not really caring for that. So right now, if you run this project, we get an option to type in the file name, and so here this is just some random text that's there initially. It's without reading any file. And now if we say input1.txt and hit open, it should actually read that input line and then put it over here. We see a problem right away, that everything is in one line, whereas in the text file itself, it was in two different lines. Okay, it's not so much of a problem. If you need to fix that when you're appending text, you have to make sure that in the text area they get appended with a new line. So you just forcefully add that. And now if you read that thing, like if you say input2.txt and open this, you'll see that we can read another file. If it's from input1.txt, you open that and the other file opens. So that's how it works. Is this thing clear? This is not probably the right way to do it. Probably what most users would expect is that there is not an open button, but a browse button. So when you hit that browse button, you get a file chooser, and you can look up any file from your hard drive or any location for that matter. Okay, so we'll get there, but that's not a problem right now. Right now, the strategy is that we're going to write this in. So let me just do one of these things, how we can print this out over here. The count of lines, the count of words, or any such thing. So I'm not going to do all of them. I'll actually do the easiest one over here and leave the rest on you. If you get stuck, let me know, then we can talk about this. Okay. Or, anyways, let me ask, which one should I do? Words, okay. Why not? So let's say we have a text field where we show the words. We can have a label as well. Now, we need a fx ID over here. So we'll say words text field. Okay. And see, we don't want our users to type in anything over here. And the way we prevent this is if we go into the properties, you just make sure that it's disabled. So no one will be able to type anything over here. Let us quickly test this out, whether this is working properly or not. We can just say Word. We can't do that. First of all, we need to save this thing. I think we did that. But we go back over here, make controller, and then we have something called Words text field. So this is where we can test this out. Words text field dot set text, and let us just try out something random. Let's say 1. So we'll be able to see whether this thing gets printed out or not. And yeah, we see that's 1 is printed over here, and I can't even click here. I can't type anything out. So that's what I actually wanted. So right now, when you're reading this thing, we need to process that. Once we are done reading this thing, this entire content, we need to analyze this and find out how many words are there. The way we do this, what I actually do is to compose the whole thing or read the entire content of the file into one single thing. Okay, so let's say that file content is a string, and initially that's empty. We don't have any content. As you read through the entire file, what you can do is you can add whatever file content was, add to that this new line. Okay, let me show you exactly what happens. System.out.println. If we print out file content, you'll see that everything gets printed as a single line on the console. So if I type in input1.txt, I hit open, you see nothing is so random after all. It gets printed just like that. Is this thing here? So we joined all these strings together using concatenation. This, by the way, this is not how you should do it. You should never concatenate strings with plus within a for loop. Okay, so for those of you who are interested, please read through that. Right now I don't want to get into that detail, but let me tell you right away that this is not how you should do it. This solves the problem, but it's a very inefficient way to do it. Okay, so this is okay. Now we can print this. Our next task is to count the number of words and set that number into the word count field, right? So let's say that there will be a method to call int words equal to count words. Count words in what? In the file content. Okay. Once you get the words, what we do is we say words text field dot set text empty string plus words. Is that clear? So if you look at count words now, let us just create this method, count words. Okay, this is where we are going to write the method. So one thing that we can do is we can run through the entire string and count how many spaces are there, and that would probably tell us how many words are there. This is definitely not going to work. There are flaws in there, but let us just address this right away. Let's see before we get the right answer or not and where it creates a problem. So let's say we have a variable count equal to 0, and we are going to return that count, but in the middle we do the processing, and we run through a for loop for int I equal to 0, I less than. How do you know the length of a string? Length method, I plus plus, and for each of these characters, for if file content, the character at index I is equal a single space, you count that as a word. Okay, this is inherently flawed, but let's do that anyways. So that's one easy way to track this, and let's say input 1.txt. it says 6 words, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. For this particular scenario, this works. But let me give you one quick example. Okay, for some weird reason, I just added a bunch of extra spaces. Okay, now how is that going to help? Let us then try again and see if our code works. Input 1.txt, open that, now it says 8, but the number of words is still 6, so that doesn't help, right? If you're only counting spaces as word separated, even at that, this one fits. So here's one ugly hack that will solve this problem. This is not the right way to do it. What we can do is we can replace all multiple spaces into single spaces, and you can do that by saying file content equal to file content dot replace all, take 2 spaces, turn that into a single space. Okay, so that would be a little bit better, but not really. I mean, it's not going to be the best possible solution. Input 1.txt, you try to open that and see now it says 7, but there are actually 6 words. Over here we had 3 spaces. We reduced 2 spaces into 1, but that also leaves 2 spaces over here. Okay? So you need to do that while file content contains 2 spaces. Keep repeating this. Keep on. Why can I not? Yeah, okay. While there are double spaces, keep on replacing them and turn them into single space. So with that thing, you can actually bring it down to 6. There can be scenarios where you have extra space right over, say right over here, extra space over here. That doesn't get solved in this process. Okay, let's say input 1.txt, you try to read that again. See now, oh, it actually does, because this is taking care of the extra space right there. But a better approach to make sure that everything is fine is to trim it off. So the first space and the last space gets taken out. That will give you 1 less word. So you'd have to add 1 word right at the end. So input 1.txt, you open that. Now it says 5. So the result you're going to return is actually count plus 1. If file content dot length not equal to 0, you return file content plus count plus 1 content, because it can be an empty file. That's when you shouldn't return 1 over there, otherwise return 0 or count. Both of them will be okay. Now that's a very bad way of writing code. I mean, this is a lot of repetition. You may have a lot of space. You need to remove them and do this. If you want to work with punctuation marks, not just spaces, that's easy to handle. How do you do it? We're just checking for space. Over there we will write or. If we have comma, that can also be a word separator. So let me just give one example and I'll leave the rest to you. And you should be able to write this on your own. Or file content dot character at I is equal to comma, then we do this. So that will mean that if you have an input file where we have like a comma, I mean a comma after followed by a space shouldn't have an extra space. Well, we should write it like this, but we should bring it down in this format. That if we have a comma, there wouldn't be anything like this. And in such scenario, if you write conditions in this format, We have input1.txt, and we try to open this. See, we don't have space over here, but we still can now. And if you have space around comma before or after, you should also make sure that they are taken out in the same process. And if you notice that we're going to spend a considerable amount of time looping through this, if you have a large file to process, this is really a bad approach. But it solves the problem given the knowledge that we have already, and that's how far we will go for now. Once you get the hang of regular expressions, then you should be able to do better. This is for future. So once you're done with the theory of computation, where we study regular expressions, with or without that course, all right? Once you know what regular expressions are, we'll see there are better ways of dealing with these sort of things. But for now, let us do it the ugly way, and at least this gets the problem solved. Counting the number of lines is very easy. Counting the number of characters is very easy. I hope you can do that on your own. Okay. And another homework. Actually, this is something I will show you in one of our classes. Try to use this file chooser. There's something called file chooser. I'm not saying exactly where it is. The search on Google about file chooser, it will bring out the dialog on how to use choose a file from any directory of your hard drive. Okay. So I'm not giving you a demonstration of how to use it. I'm just mentioning the name. See if you can solve it by yourself. I'll cover this in class anyways. Is this thing clear? Can we finish up all the tasks? I mean, the lines, words, characters, digits, and vowels. So let's try to do it on our own. If you get stuck, please let me know. When's our next class? On Wednesday, right? We got a class on. Oh, Thursday. Yeah. Okay. So I will post the question pattern either today or maybe, I'll try to do it today. So you'll have the question pattern, but we will talk about it on the class of 8th. All right then. Sorry I took too long.